Hello, everyone. This is Earthen Mystique, and I am here to answer two questions that were brought up in my one of my geomancy reading videos. Let me read them off really quick. So the first question, first question was from actually no one to you, that is. And to my video, they asked, I was reading playing cards and I was wondering if you're able to add two houses together for a composite energy of those houses. So to answer your question, yes, you can. If I understand your question correctly, yes, you can. So what I do, I have to have a very specific reason for doing that. Sure, you can add the figure in the first house and the figure in the second house to get a third figure. And in that sense, it really depends also on your house attribution system because the shield slash houses can kind of, in this case, short answer, yes, you can. Secondary answer, be sure that you know why you're doing that and ask, because sometimes it might just be better to ask another question. Just throwing that out there. Otherwise, yeah, of course you can. Like, for example, a better example, and I think this one is a lot less hairy. Um, the first house and the seventh house. Let's say you're going to ask, okay, how is this marriage? How will this marriage be? Or how will this business partnership be? Of course, you can look at if there's going, of the, what's the word? Perfection. I say conjunction because I think astrologically. Of course, you can look at the perfection between the first and the seventh house to kind of detail a little bit, but you also look at the figures, and then you look at the adding the figures together to kind of see, okay, if these two work together, what will be their, because business is different and weird and relationships are a little weird because you technically always create a third party, an implicit third party that has its own energy. Every relationship and every business kind of has this. It's its own breathing thing. So you can actually add these two together and kind of get a little bit of insight as to what's the vibes, what kind of energies do these two hold if they're working together. So yes, you can do that. With that being said, moving on, another question that was asked by Hussein Alajmi. Sorry, seventh house is for partnership and thieves, but eighth house is known for enemies, 12th house for unknown enemies. Thanks. Um, to continue, it's like I meant seventh house is for real spouse, not lover relationship, temporary, because fifth house for lover, but that partnership for real. One is seventh for requisite, whom, for, or about. Thanks again. Bye. Um, so and after that, I'm like, okay, I understand what he's trying to say. Basically, um, what he's saying is, because in the video that I posted, that, it seems like a lot of people watch it, they probably don't comment as much. I encourage y'all to comment. I like comments. I like hearing what you guys think. So yeah, please. So the issue at hand, as I understand it, is that he's saying seventh house is for a committed relationship, and thieves and enemies. Eighth house is for also thieves, I think. I think he says. And enemies, known enemies. Eighth house for known enemies. And then fifth house is for kind of like temporary relationships. So um, here's the thing. This kind of goes back. I want to talk a little bit, and it's kind of sort of chaos magic, kind of sort of not chaos magic. It is chaos magic because it kind of blurs the lines. So I encourage my more conservative friends who believe that, you know, I encourage my more conservative friends who are prone or likely to believe that things are immutable, not changeable, to just humor me for a moment, okay? Especially in terms of these readings and these systems that we use for divination. I guess you could almost look at it as having a purist way of looking at how things have to be. There are people who say, follow these, the books, the instructions in these books to the T. exactly like this. You have to do it this way. Um, Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't. So, for example, for Mr. Alajmi, your system, maybe it says this is this and there is nothing else. I'm saying that's not true. There is something else. And I want to talk a little bit about the house systems and how that plays out culturally. Because from my experience, because I have gone the Islamic route and have spoken with a lot of Islamic folk and, you know, shared ideas and thoughts, a lot of like the house associations, there's even a house association that is more Islamically leaning that would mean something different. Even the figures themselves mean something different depending on the lens, cultural lens that you're using. There is nothing more controversial. I mean, there's nothing more controversial than sex and how we handle sex in our sexual relationships. So, of course, where there's going to be some serious differences in how the fifth house, seventh house, and 11th house are going to be interpreted for these kind of relationships. So, I'm bringing this up and I want you to consider there is a meta model, so to speak, that you're working through. You yourself are in a cultural bubble that determines these house associations. Like, for example, when I was in Pakistan and I did readings for other people, for my friends and family, um, I had found that fourth house as father's home means something very differently. It's not as clearly defined because fourth house is the father's home, third house is the neighborhood, your community. Well, for me, it's very distinct. My father has a specific address here in the United States. Um, my neighborhood is here. However, way different over there because the community is so much more enmeshed and things are way different. The community and cultural community makes something as distinct as fourth house, third house in terms of home and relationships a little murky. Family homes and relationships a lot murky. So, with that being said, please understand your cultural perception of a situation might change or be different from another person's, which in turn would detail differences in how you should read your houses. So, with that being said, I'm going to first go ahead and talk about what the houses, how I use it, what they mean, what they signify. And then after this, probably over the next 2 weeks or so, I'll actually post example readings that I do. And they'll be real life examples. Excuse me. Yeah, they'll be real life examples. Moving on. So let me stay on focus, stay on track. So first house of the self. That tells about your state. It also is kind of like if I'm reading for you, it's a red flag. It's not just first house, also the seventh house. So like if I'm reading for you, I'm going to put, and I say you, my audience, if you were to get a reading from me, I by default put you in the seventh house. That's just how I am because I'm like, okay, you're an other person. So for me, anyone who's not me goes to the seventh house. So I rotate to the seventh. Um, Number two, your first house is also your mental state, your health, your vitality, your frame of mind. So that's what the first house represents. That's pretty easy. Second house is your possessions, your money. Um, Actually, Polyphanes, and again, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. Your I'm not sure if it's your magic name or your blog, whatever. I'm sorry either way. Has a pretty robust system for readings, finding lost objects, which does involve the second house. So, second house is your possessions. Um, Third house, brother, sister. Um, I use that for my siblings. Um, I won't maybe cousins, but that's one of those because I'm reading for a lot of other people um, who are overseas. So third house is kind of a little murky. I look at that as kind of like kind of sort of family in the area, but not possibly even extended family, but definitely brother, sister at least. The neighborhood is also what I look at the third house as, which again, that can overlap with the fourth house depending on where you're at in your life. Fourth house is, I use that for the father's home. Now, the father's home for the fourth house, like in modern astrology, people are going to, again, there is a difference between a shield and an astrological chart. I'm astrological leaning, so I'm actually going to look and I blend both until I find a reason not to. So for fourth house, a lot of modern astrologers will attribute the fourth house to being the mother's home or referring to the mother, anything involving the mother. I'm different, and so that's one of those things like, yeah, I'm going to stick with tradition. That's going to be father now. So it also, the fourth house represents kind of like the outcome of a situation. Um, Not necessarily how it's going to end, but the outcome of the situation. So you have beginning, middle, end. Are you happy with it? Are you sad with it? Can I have your feedback? Can you fill out this survey? you know, fourth house is kind of like, here's what the results of this survey says. Then I have the fifth house. Fifth house. Now this is going back. Yes, I do agree that fifth house is for like one night stands, dating, fun. I don't consider that fifth house to be very long lasting relationships or signaling long lasting relationships. It's also I view this as anything that relies on chance. So gambling, investments, and gambling, investments, stock market stuff. I look at the fifth house for that. Um, Anything that's fun and leisurely, books and such, and that's pulling more so from Greer's book, because third house can also be communication. So one could easily say, okay, how is this? Am I going to enjoy this book? Are you going to look for the fifth house, or are you going to look at the second house? It's not second, third house. Third house is communications. Yes. It's the ability for information to travel. Yes. A book is basically a long-term information that has been kind of collected over a long period of time. And one could argue for either house for talking about a book, is what I'm trying to say. But traditionally, fifth house, book. Is this book going to make me good? Am I going to enjoy it? Look at the fifth house. Sixth house is health. It's also it's health and labor. And possibly even kind of like your employees. But like if you're looking for a permanent full-time position, permanent full-time position or a career, you wouldn't look at the sixth house. You would look at the 10th house. But yeah, so that is the sixth house. Seventh house, going back now, long-term relationships is my interpretation for the seventh house. Why? From experience. For me, anytime when I would look for, and also consider in our culture here in the United States, you can live with someone for years, not be married, and it be a permanent relationship. And when we talk about permanent relationship where finances are intertwined and intertangled, where investments are intertangled, where my successes depend on the successes of my partner, where my ability and my resources are entangled with my partner. So I would look long-term relationships that are like we're living together. Seventh house issue, totally a seventh house issue. Yeah, but flip side, for cultures that don't have that, where that's frowned upon and looked at, of course, makes perfect sense. Where only your spouse is your seventh house. It's represented by your seventh house. In cultures where dating is not a thing, of course, it's like not, well, overt dating is not a thing. Because I know stuff, glares. um, that would be a fifth house issue. Or affairs, fifth house issue. It's not a seventh house issue, that's a fifth house issue. So everything that's not, on the books, not even on the books, but it's not involving like that intertwined aspect in a relationship, anything that does not do that, that's fifth house. So your one night stands, you're dating, you're kind of speculative. Again, you're gambling when you date. You're gambling with your heart in a way. You're gambling to figure out whether or not, which by the way, gambling with your heart, that's going to be a topic for another video. So help me God. um, but so that's the seventh house versus the fifth house. Um, Seventh house does have more permanence to it. Seventh house is also your business partners. But just like I said before, you could have a business partner without necessarily having a contract involved. Just like you can have a spousal partner, we call it common law marriages, if I understand correctly, whereas like you're not really married, but you're co-residing. You're residing with each other. You're living with each other. I mean, even when I go and anyways, moving on. We're not going to go into the detail on that front. Legal details on America's health stuff, blah, blah, blah. Oh, sorry. And blah, blah, blah. So, business partners, I almost want to say even businesses, because going back to what I said about the first house is the self. Seventh house is the other. Here in America, businesses have the ability to speak through their money. So businesses are somehow considered people. So we can say, hypothetically, that a business is a person. But that is a cultural interpretation. Because a lot of people say, well, yeah, business is like a king or an empire or whatever, so I want to make it into a 10th house. Because I also had this conversation in the Geomantic study group on Facebook. And I'm like, no, there's a reason I'm going to count this as a 7th house issue. So that's 7th house. 8th house. 8th house is the money of your partner, of your business partner or enemy, because 7th house is also your enemies, your overt enemies. Because again, especially now in the US, let's be real, we don't have that connectedness that we did before, a long time ago, before technology and this thing. We do, but it's in a very different form. Anyone that I look at could be my enemy because I have no relation to them. So 7th house can also be your overt, in your face enemy. The other. 8th house is their money, their finances. But again, that 7th house becomes, you can look at it as starting over at the first. And then everything from the first house to the 12th house now becomes kind of like their first house. Their first house, that's their self. Excuse me. Their second house, that's their money. Their third house, that's their communications. That's their neighborhood. Fourth house, that's their father. So it repeats in a way. But not moving forward, I won't look at that quite yet. Maybe I'll make that into another video so I can illustrate it a little better. So second house is also hidden treasures, death, things that are just not seen. And in a way, it's a stretch. This is a stretch of an interpretation. Banks. And here's why. Because one of the ways people used to save money was burying it. Hence why people look for buried treasure. Because people can hide money when they bury it. So, it's a stretch of an interpretation, but it's one. Inheritance is another thing that comes from the 8th house. Things that are dead, things that are buried, dead. We also look at the 8th house, at least I use the 8th house for black magic or low-level magic. Even though technically, which we'll talk about a little later about opposite houses, if the 9th house is high magic, and it is, then the opposite of it should be low magic. The opposite of the 9th house is the 3rd house. So 3rd house should be magic, low magic. Low magic. So anyways, 9th house, high magic, the religious sphere, religion, long distances, um, and because we're talking about distances, anytime we talk about distances, you can easily say some variant of communication. So, long distances, uh, high magic. So, if we're talking about God, that would be a ninth house issue. If we're talking about an angel, that'll be a ninth house issue. Anything that is considered religiously oriented is a ninth house issue. 10th house is the government, it's the state, it's the king or ruler. Um, it's the mother. Um, See, it's kind of funny, right? We think, oh, fourth house is that's the mother because Mother Earth, and the fourth house is the lowest. Da 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 da. Whatever. I'd rather have the woman as king rather than necessarily looking at it in the fourth house. Which I know that I'm adding interpretations. I'm just kind of that's just on that part in attributing the woman as the king. That's just me being half crazy and messing with you. But on a serious note, 10th house is the house of the mother, um, and her home and her family. Um, let's see here. 11th house is kind of like loyal servants of the 10th. It's your wishes. It's also kind of like there is association with it kind of being your personal allies. It's your friends. There you go. It's your friends. It's your friends. It's your yeah, your friends. Also pretty important if you look at that, your friends versus the fifth house, people who are kind of like passing jerks, people who stay, people who go. And then 12th house, I use that as being surprises or things that I don't know or things that kind of catch me off guard or my blind spot. That's what I look at for the 12th house in particular. So I hope y'all found this video helpful. I hope it maybe got you thinking a little. Um, One of the things that my mentor told me was that no matter what house system you choose to use, if you, well, and the, the, um, I use the universe lightly. The universe will find a way to communicate with you through whatever house system you use, okay? There is no right or wrong answer to a degree. So long as you pay attention as to what's being communicated and what's being revealed, notice perfection, notice whatever, and you're consistent, that is what determines, that's what determines kind of whether or not something works or what does not work, not adherence to a law or rule. Um, so with that being said, I hope you found this reading not reading. Man, I'm stuck in habits. Hope you found this video helpful. Please like, subscribe, comment. Tell me if you disagree with me. Anywhere where you disagree with me, tell me if I was unclear about something, or if if I said something that conflicted. Let me know. All right. Until next time, some of you, I'll be seeing you tonight at the Zodiac party. I look forward to reading for you. Until next time, bye.